Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled neighbor built a cabin on my mountain property to rent it out on Airbnb while we were gone. I ended up reporting him to the IRS to get revenge. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. The first one starts like this. My family has owned a small piece of land/property in the beautiful mountains in our area. Extended family as well as my grandparents lived there at one point, but there is not a house or anything anymore. It's just a plot of land on a cold mountain where about half a dozen other people live. If you're curious why we don't sell the property, there are two reasons for that. The first being, it's not exactly real estate heaven. The second and bigger reason are just to remind us of our family. We might not know what it is, but we have history there and find it nice. Also, just to clear things up for the story, the property is in my name only, even though we refer to it as the family property. As a final note, I travel up there about once a year, just to kind of prove that we didn't abandon the property or anything, and that we still own it and are aware. We just don't really do anything with it except let nature enjoy the space. So I made the trip up there for my annual check, only to find that on part of the property was a cabin. To make things weirder, people were staying in it and I had no clue what was going on. I knocked on the door and asked what they were doing on my property, only to confuse them even more. They had shown me that they rented this cabin as an Airbnb. I also saw on the phone that the name of the person who rented it out was the man who owned the property next to mine. So I went over and talked to him. Me, why is there a cabin of people on my property claiming that you rented it out to them? Neighbor, turns out when people are hiking the mountains, a place to stay the night is perfect for them. Easy money. Me, you do realize that the cabin is on my property and not yours, right? Neighbor, I don't want people on my land. Besides, you never use yours, and you're just wasting it, so I saw my opportunity and went for it. Me, that's not how laws work. Just because I'm not using it, it doesn't mean it's not my property. If something happens, I'm the one liable for these people. I want you to get rid of the listing and take the cabin down. Neighbor, no. I've watched you do nothing with the land for years. At this point, it's up for grabs, since you clearly don't even bother with it. Me, I pay taxes on this land. I come and check on this land. Legally, the land is mine and you cannot just build a cabin. I'm giving you one chance to get rid of it or you won't like what happens next. I didn't want to just start a huge fight and instead gave him a week to take down the listing at the very least. I could live with the cabin staying for longer, but not him continuing to rent it out to people. To be honest, I really didn't care about him making a profit off of my land. I was far too worried if somebody got hurt and suddenly I'm the one in trouble for something I never agreed to. A week came and went with the listing for the cabin not going away and constantly getting booked for 1 or 2 night stays. The first thing I did was contact Airbnb and claim that somebody was using my property illegally and claiming it as their own. Of course, with proof of the listing existing under his name and me proving that only I owned that land. Within 48 hours, the listing is gone and the neighbor is banned from Airbnb. I know this because he called me screaming that I got him kicked off the site and I'm a douchebag for it. I was only just getting started though. My next snitching spree was to the IRS because we all know that if he wasn't even using his own property, he was not declaring any of the profits. The government breathing down his neck seemed like the best thing to do. So as my final act in revenge against him, I got a lawyer and sued him for what he did. Illegally building and profiting off my land without my knowledge or permission on the matter. Again, he tried to argue that since I didn't use the land, I could not hold my claim to it. Once he realized that he had no defense, he was basically begging to settle with me outside of court. I did not give him that satisfaction and sued him for more money than he even made renting out that cabin and won. I could have done a lot of things with that money, but the longer I thought, the more brilliant of a plan I came up with. I swear by the end I had that giant evil smirk like the Grinch had in the movie. So now part of the lawsuit was him claiming the cabin was his and I could not use it. I didn't want to have any fights with that, so I let it be torn down. Nothing was stopping me now from building my own cabin on my land. In fact, nothing was stopping me from spacing out my land and building 5 cabins in total. It would be so much easier for when family all wanted to come and stay on our mountain property. And it would be a shame if when nobody was there we just let all those nice cabins sit, right? Renting them out and making a big profit was the only logical thing. I wouldn't have even known if my neighbor didn't tell me how hikers might want to stay on the mountain for a couple of days. You can imagine that this got my neighbor furious and trying to report me for using my land in an appropriate manner. That if I was not gonna live on the property, I couldn't just use it for tourists like a business. There was no law saying I couldn't just do that, and neighbor was left to fume. I was too busy making money and laughing about the whole thing. The only thing that could have made this story perfect is if we uncovered some family history about the land being a hotel in the past or something. Sadly though, the family history of the property is still a mystery, but at least now we can create new history for future generations wanting to know why the family owns a random plot of land on a mountain. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I am so happy that OP got revenge on the entitled neighbor and in the end turned everything against him. That revenge must have been so satisfying for him. Anyway, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment if you want to boost the algorithm. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is a grocery store revenge story. So I was standing in the ice cream aisle holding a 6-pack of beers and 1 cider and a couple bags of chips, trying to decide if I wanted to bring ice cream sandwiches or maybe some jerky for game night. I had just gotten off from my other job, so I was wearing black slacks, a white dress shirt and a black tie with a very obvious pin showing where I worked. I hear a slightly condescending "excuse me" from the side of me. Looking over, I see a slightly overweight middle-aged woman with one of those "I would like to speak to your manager" haircuts. I step back a few steps to let her pass and go back to my internal debate. After a few seconds she hasn't moved and I hear the most obnoxious, entitled "Hello? Earth to jackass." I look at her and she says with extreme impatience dripping with venom, "The lines are too long, you need to ring me up. I know you've got a free register in the back somewhere. I have things to do, ring me up now." I don't work here, but you know what, I worked retail technical support at the time and I had a really bad day, dealing with people exactly like her. "Oh, I'm so sorry ma'am, I thought you were just trying to get by." I reach into the cabinet and grab a thing of mint skinny cow ice cream sandwiches. Not on a diet, but those things are damn good. "Let me just get these ice cream sandwiches to the disabled lady up front waiting for me and I will ring you up over there in the home and decor section." I point to the farthest corner of the store where no reps go and no registers are. Again, I'm so sorry. I will even hand these return items off to another associate to put away and I'll be right over. "Well, fine. Please be quick, I have crap to do, you know." And she walks away. I took my items up front to check out, waited all of 3 minutes in line, and then went on my merry way. It's amazing that some people just assume a random bystander is the person that can help them and then treats them like crap without even knowing who they are. F that lady and people like her. And the next one is a story about a ticket and getting revenge. A few years back, my old car was on its last legs, my mechanic said it wouldn't last much longer, and the best thing to do was to sell it cheap and move on before it gave out and was ready to be scrapped. I loved that little car, but I put it up on Craigslist for $500 and I got a bite. The guy buying it was in his 20s with a pregnant wife and his dad was footing the bill. I was clear with them that it was sold as is and I couldn't make any promises about its longevity. The buyer said that if it lasted 6 months he would be happy with the purchase, so he signed the bill of sale and I handed over the title. I immediately went to the DMV website and registered it as sale and assumed he would finish the process by transferring the title. Turns out I was wrong about 2 things. The car lasted much longer than 6 months and he didn't bother to pay the $77 to transfer the title. I discovered this when I received a photo radar ticket for running a red light. I was confused because the street was way across town in an area I rarely visit. When I went online to view the high-res traffic cam photos, I found it was the buyer in my old car, but my name was still attached to the plates. After some serious cursing, I copied all the records, dates, bill of sale, etc. and mailed copies off to the courthouse. It was his citation, but I had to prove it to the court. 2 weeks later, I got another letter from the fuzz. Another ticket, this time for speeding. Same driver, same car, same plates with my name still attached. Again, I had to copy all the paperwork, write a long letter to the clerk and mail it all off to the courthouse. The third ticket really made me mad. I started making calls and discovered that this scam is pretty common. Some folks buy a junker and rack up fines until they wreck or abandon the car and their name was never on it, so nobody bothers to punish them for it. It's all on the previous owner to clean up the mess and prove who was at fault. This time, I wrote an extra long letter to the court clerk and did a little research to include the guy's picture, home address and listed phone number. A few months went by and I thought it was all over. Hell, the car should have given out by now anyway. But then the fourth ticket arrived showing him in high-res zipping past the radar cam in my old car with my old bumper sticker still on the back, Giant Meteor 2K16, and all his kids piled into the backseat. The 5th and 6th tickets felt like Groundhog's Day. I didn't even bother to put the paperwork away, I kept it out on my desk ready to copy. By the time the 7th ticket arrived, we were well over a year beyond the sale, and enough was enough. This was not just some dude forgetting to do some paperwork or not knowing the right way to go about buying a car, this was simply intentional. It was time for some pro-revenge. First, I called the police, and after a week of back and forth, finally spoke with a traffic cop who said, "Enough is enough," and went to pay the guy a visit. He said he couldn't disclose what would happen during that conversation, but the total amount of the likely unpaid traffic tickets was enough to get his attention. The tickets and late fees were several times the value of the car. That was not enough though, just having to pay his tickets wasn't appropriate for the 7 freaking times I had to copy that damn bill of sale for the court clerk. So I started going back through my records of every ticket and every photo, and I found an interesting theme. In every photo, his tiny kids were in the car, including the newborn infant, all packed into the backseat. I called Child Protective Services anonymously. I did not provide any info that was not 100% factual and verifiable. The tickets showed that this guy was operating an identity fraud scheme out of his home, essentially stealing my identity and who knows how many others. His children were present throughout, and furthermore, he regularly violated traffic rules and put his children in serious danger by speeding, running red lights, and committing other traffic violations. If he was doing this stuff so often in front of a big wide camera, how do you think he was driving when he wasn't being watched? I declined to provide my name or number as I had nothing more to offer and didn't want to be involved in the case any further. I gave them all the evidence I had of 3 small children in repeated dangerous and illegal situations, all of which were verifiable by photo evidence and court documents. After that, I stopped getting traffic tickets from him. Maybe the car finally gave out. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I have to say, that almost seems like a legal loophole or something. I can totally believe that some people simply buy cheap cars and then hope that the seller is not interested anymore and not paying attention anymore, and then they can pretty much do just whatever they want in case the seller does not pay attention to tickets, etc. Pretty insane if you ask me. Anyway, the next one is an Am I the Jerk story. And by the way, let me know in the comments what you think about having Am I the A-hole stories towards the end of the video. I, 18 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 19 female, for about 4 months. We met on Instagram, I followed her for a while, and she has a real grunge, edgy aesthetic going on. I thought she was super cool and hot, and when we started going out, she was basically also a really edgy person. She makes the occasional cringy edgelord comment about hating people and how life was so much better in the 80s when she wasn't even alive. Which is ironic indeed, which cringes me out, but whatever, it's manageable. However, she also has an immense hate for kids and babies. Whenever kids get near her, she gives them dirty looks and moves away or groans. She has a 4-year-old sister and she won't even sit on the same sofa as her, giving excuses like, "She's dirty, kids are all feral," and so on. Just ridiculous crap you say when you are 13 and in your emo phase, not 19. Recently, she came to a family party at my parents' house, and long story short, she ended up alone in a room with my sister, who is a new mom and is only 16, and because of her social anxiety, she was too afraid of seeming rude to say no, but she ended up holding my sister's baby while she was in the middle of changing a diaper. As soon as my sister leaves the room to grab a new diaper, my girlfriend put the baby down on the couch, getting crap on the couch and shouting for someone to come take care of the gremlin. This really annoyed me. I get that she doesn't like kids, that she doesn't want to be near them, but she doesn't have to be rude and obnoxious about it. If she didn't want to hold the baby, she could have said so or got someone else to do it. She just seems to think that kids should instinctively know to keep away from her. I just don't know how she expects to go through life never having to deal with children at all. Also, at the party, she moved away from my 5-year-old cousin when he sat next to her to eat some cake, and when asked to pass the baby's blanket to my sister, she pinched it with 2 fingers and flicked it over. On the way home, I told her it's ridiculous the way she acts, and she basically said something along the lines of, "Kids are disgusting, they are entitled and dumb and cannot see the world for what it really is." I told her not everything has to fit her stupid edgy narrative, and she thinks I'm an a-hole. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? And a user on Reddit said, "Not the a-hole, but it also sounds like you guys are super young and got into a relationship for surface reasons. You may be able to avoid this problem in the future by taking extra care to make sure someone's personality is compatible with yours before jumping into a relationship. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, but considering you've already told her you don't like this behavior and she's blown you off, I don't know what you're expecting to happen. Either tune out the rants and change the subject as quickly as possible, or take this as a sign that you are not compatible and find someone who's at least willing to tolerate the presence of children when necessary. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Neighbors trespassed on my property and stole a kayak from my lake. I caught them in the act. One thing I love about my property is that I have my own lake right in the backyard. Now, not the entire thing is my property, and I will get back to that point in a little while. Still, having a lake back there has been amazing for me and my family. The area surrounding it was not in the best shape and I did not want my kids getting hurt, so I fixed it up with some large rocks and made a small dock. We mainly used the lake to ride in our kayak, fish and in general enjoy ourselves. Enter my a-hole neighbor who moved in a few months before this whole story started. It was winter at that point, so there was no issue regarding the pond until spring hit. Now, I have a gate surrounding my land, and that includes the entrance to the dock I built that I consider the entrance to the lake. Once spring hit, neighbor was constantly asking my permission for his kids to use my dock and go into the lake. These kids were small, and from the sounds of it, neighbor also expected me to supervise his kids because they were dressed for swimming and he was dressed like he was going out somewhere. Obviously, my answer was a big no and that he could not come onto my property and use the dock. I was not going to get in trouble if something happened to them, and also I just did not want people I didn't know on my property, which is kind of understandable if you ask me. After a while, he stopped asking and I figured that he got the message. That is when I found out one day that he was actually sneaking over the fence when I was not around and using my dock without permission. It was only because another neighbor saw him and let me know what was going on. I could also tell that some of my supplies had been used because the kayak was wet despite not being used and a fishing pole was clearly messed with and for some reason all tangled up. I'm not a shy person about things and walked right up to the neighbor to let him know that I knew what he was doing. And then he had to stop. He got angry and started threatening to call the police on me for restricting him access to his own land. Back to the point of me saying that I did not actually own the entire lake, it was shared between my property, neighbor's property, and 2 houses on the other side of the lake that have no purpose to this story. To be technical about it all, neighbor does have the right to use the lake, however there is no reason I have to let him use it from my land. I tried to explain to him that if he wanted to build his own dock and entry point he could, but I was not going to let him use my property. He did not know that I was a man of my word and was not going to let him get away with doing whatever he wanted. He still trespassed and used my kayak. I could not store it anywhere, but the fishing gear got locked up in the garage where he could not get his hands on it. He was even getting cockier and using my kayak and my dock when I was home and could see him doing it. He even dared me once to call the police because he could be back in his house before they showed up. It was a spread out town, so the police would take a while to get there. Instead, I decided that I was going to get revenge on this guy and planned the perfect way to do it. Usually, I like giving a person a taste of their own medicine for revenge. Neighbor did not have a dock or anything to use, so I needed to come up with something else. Instead though, I created a plan that would catch them in the act and get them caught once and for all. I know I could have used a camera, but that just seemed boring, and I have heard stories of that with the police taking forever to actually do something about it. No, I had to have this guy caught red-handed for trespassing and theft. The main step in this plan was to actually make small holes in my own kayak. She was not really a ship, but it was the closest I got to feeling like a captain. Sacrifices had to be made though, and she was getting a little old anyway. Then I left some of my fishing gear out on the dock again, this time older ones that I did not really use anymore, all of which were labeled with my name, which will be important later. A couple days passed and their neighbor jumped the fence with his son and they fell right into my trap. They took the fishing gear and the kayak and rowed out towards the middle of the lake. They did not get very far before realizing they were taking on water from the holes and clearly had no idea what they were doing. With a kayak, especially if you don't know what you're doing, once it starts to go down, you really cannot paddle it back. I took that moment to call the police and let them know that my neighbors were in the middle of the lake sinking in a kayak. When the police got there, the neighbor and his son had just finally gotten out of the water and back onto my dock. For anyone wondering, his son had a life vest on and they both could swim, so they were not in any danger. The police did not even get a chance to ask a question before neighbor came right up to me and started yelling that I did that on purpose to ruin his weekend fishing plans. No idea how he had those plans since he did not know my fishing gear was out till he got to the kayak, and then he said the worst possible thing that he could have right in front of the police officers. "Neighbor, you keeping a kayak in condition like that, I ought to sue you for damages and take your whole dock." And yep, he was angry and raging enough that he confessed without realizing it to the police. They started asking questions like, did he have permission to use the dock or kayak, and was he let into the property by an owner? He tried to say that I let him in, but I was quick to shut him down and tell him that I had witnesses that could say otherwise. Then he tried to cover the story by saying that it was his kayak and fishing poles that he had taken out on the lake and had only used the dock. They did not buy his story for a second about the kayak being his, and I noticed that swimming back he still had the fishing poles. I pointed out how they were labeled with my name and the police had heard enough. They told him that he was not to trespass on my property ever again or he could be arrested. I decided to get a restraining order against him anyway, so that he might see it as a little more legal. He knows enough about me now to know I would not hesitate calling the police on him again. I did not try and sue him for money because at the end of the day it was me that put the holes in the kayak. I probably couldn't have gotten away with saying he somehow ruined it, but I'm not that kind of person. As of writing this, he has stayed on his side of the fence and has not even said a word to me since the police came that day. Sometimes winning can just feel like a weight is taken off your shoulders. And yeah, Ripe Stars, time and time again I really find it fascinating how some people have the audacity to not only trespass on your property, but then also use your personal items for their pleasure. Okay, maybe that sounded a little bit wrong, but still, you catch my drift. Did you ever have any neighbors that used your personal property or maybe even stole it? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.